Welcome to MasterMind Minutes, the podcast that focuses on the franchise industry. We'll cover topics that are important to franchisees as well as franchisors and share interesting insights that will help you build your business. We have one guest, we ask one question, and we do this in minutes, not hours. Hello again, and welcome to another edition of MasterMind Minutes. My name is Gary Occhiogrosso. I am the founder and managing partner for Franchise Growth Solutions, as well as the publisher of franchisemoneymaker.com. As I always say, if you're new to the program, if this is the first time you're here, it's a very simple concept. We have one guest, we ask one question, kind of float around on one topic. We do this in minutes, not hours, so it's a quick and easy listen. You can put in your ear pods while you're on the treadmill in the morning and get some insights on business, entrepreneurship, and franchising. And today, my guest is actually also an individual who's become my friend over the years here in the franchising business. It's Ben Woodruff, and he is the co-founder and CEO of Whoops, which is a retail. We say Macaron. I think the French, he told me, say Macaron. It's a franchise concept with 30 units here in the U.S. Very unique, not only unique product, but a very unique business model, which he'll tell us about. Ben has over 20 years of experience in really a very diverse business experience that I've learned from when he and I have talked. It's across multiple industries, but really specializing in the franchise sector, which, you know, is why I've asked him to come on here. He has an interesting approach. It's what he calls a people-first approach, and he does that by creating an environment that fosters collaboration, innovation, and growth. And he's consistently focused on outstanding results. That's what he looks at. What are the results? How do we make outstanding results? His sweet spot, that's my word as I use, his sweet spot is really franchise operations, strategic planning, business development, and really the drive or the goal with sustainable growth and profitability for his franchisees. So I won't get into too much of his background. I'll let him tell us about it. Ben, thank you so much for being with us today. And before we get into the question, why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and about Whoops?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me, Gary. Appreciate it. And echo your sentiments. It's been good getting to know you over the last few years, especially being here in New York with you. So excited to spend some time on the podcast with you today. Just, my background, as you mentioned, like I started in finance. I have a pretty diverse background. I've been exposed to a lot of different businesses and industries, and I've kind of found my niche in franchising over the last, 15, 16 years here. Currently, co-CEO of Whoops Macarons and Gifts. We're a quickly growing gifting franchise. Our main product line is French macarons. We're super proud of the fact that we believe we have the best macarons in the world. And if not in the world, certainly in the US without question. So we've been growing our franchise system here, over the last several years. I think we started awarding franchises in 16 and took a few lumps in 2020. But we've developed a really nice small footprint model. We excel really in high traffic areas, transportation hubs. We do some of the higher end malls still, the B&A malls. But designed a business that's simple to execute. No food prep. You're a you're a restaurant guy through and through. So triple sinks and health departments and food prep and all that stuff. We manufacture the macarons, ship them direct to our franchisees. Really, all I have to do is put them in the display cases and focus on selling them, and focus on growing top line revenue, which we know is always the solution to every successful business. So we're excited. We're continuing our growth here through franchising in the U.S. and kind of throughout the U.S. and super excited about our model. Never been more bullish on what we're doing and the demand for our product, and just excited to be part of Whoops, of course.
Great. Thank you for the detail there. So what I'd like to talk about today, really, as we always tell our guests, and I think you have a brand that has 30 units or so, that would still be considered an emerging brand. And emerging brands have unique challenges. Obviously, mature brands do, but emerging brands have several challenges, not only on the franchisor side, but also on the franchisee side, and where we see franchise success and growth and sustainable growth, along with, profitable operating units, is when the franchisor spends time building a solid foundation, a solid base of resources and support mechanisms for its franchise community. So what I'd like to know is your thoughts on the importance of building that sort of foundation and solid foundation for your franchisees. What is it that you believe about that, and what is it that you do to execute on that strategy?
Yeah, I think it's completely paramount. The success of any franchise system will ultimately have long-term success with successful, profitable franchisees. That's really the secret. Now it's difficult getting there, right? You have top performers, mid performers, low performers, like in anything else in any industry or academia or whatever it may be. So our job is to do the best that we can to put as many tools in the hands of our franchisees to be successful. I think one of the challenges we see in our industry, Gary, just in general, is like a lot of brands franchise, and it's difficult to raise capital when you're starting to franchise because you don't really have the track record of 10, 15 stores. So getting access to capital is difficult at an early stage. So we kind of see many of these brands, they bootstrap, they sell a franchise, they, are using franchisees to, to fund the next thing. And that's the way it just goes, frankly, because there's just not, that's just the reality of what it is. So, what we've done, we've been in the same situation. So what we've tried to do is be really scrappy. We've taken, very modest, annual ad funds and, gone to places like South America to hire great graphic designers, to hire great customer support people, to hire great bloggers, things that we just couldn't afford domestically, but we're able to give the franchisees the support they deserve, even at the lower economics. We're always, collaborating with our franchisees. I think it's very important to meet with them, a couple times a month, which we do, which is big. Just trying to get ideas from the field, let them yell at us sometimes if they're having a frustrating week, whatever it may be. There's nothing out of bounds on those calls, but more to just spend time and understand what's going on and how we can better support them. When we look to roll out, new initiatives, we want to include franchisees. I'm pretty excited. We're pretty deep into a process of launching a Macaron mobile, which is going to be a cute little trailer that you can take to, street fairs and festivals. And we've already got another little mobile unit, but this will be kind of, version 2 with some air conditioning and more freezers and just more capabilities. And we're, basically piloting that and doing the total build with one of our franchisees that's excelling most in non-retail revenue, which is, outside of malls or transportation hubs or whatever it may be. So we're literally on meetings with him, the manufacturer, the design team, and everybody's in it together. So we ultimately develop a prototype that works for the rest of our franchisees. So I just believe collaboration from the field is paramount, as well, just in building the right stuff, and then also building the right culture in the system.
Yep. And I hear you, and those are great things. So I'm going to sort of boil that down into a word. What came to my mind when you were speaking just now was the word innovation, and as a support mechanism for franchisees, franchisors who are continuing to innovate the concept and come up with new ways to give franchisees opportunities to make money. As you mentioned, your mobile Macaron cart. I think that's great. I think that's a great idea, by the way. Those are the things that truly support franchisees. Sometimes people confuse that with, well, are you going to, help me build the shop? Or in your case, it's kiosks. We'll talk about that in a minute. Well, of course, that's a given. But it's that extra mile. And I think being innovative and continuing to give your franchisees ideas on different ways to make money, as well as, you use the word collaborative, as well as keeping an open mind that sometimes some of those really good ideas come from the franchisee up to the franchisor. Nobody has a lock on good ideas. So you mentioned in sort of your intro there that, for a franchisee, it sounds like you guys have done a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of product and production and supply chain and that sort of stuff. So again, from a support, staying with our question of support and solid foundation, specifically, what are you referring to when you talk about, hey, all the franchisee has to do is put it in the display case and worry about selling it? What does that look like? What does that mean?
Yeah, so we have an interesting supply chain. We used to manufacture, as you know, our macarons here in a pretty large facility in the Bronx.
Hmm.
And ultimately, we decided we were growing so quickly. We decided to move that production to a facility overseas in Belgium. The great thing about French macarons, regardless of whether you buy them in a mom and pop shop in Paris or you're buying them in one of our stores, the reality is during the process of creating the pastry, they are frozen. The dry air, the freezers pulls the moisture and humidity out of the shells, which gives macarons the nice light, airy kind of texture to it. So the shelf life is 12 months once they're frozen, which is amazing. So we have a supply chain that comes from Belgium to Golden State Cold Storage here right outside of New York City. Go into freezers there, and then they're shipped on frozen pallets, and they go into freezers at the store. So really, the first time that they actually, come to room temperature is when they hit the display cases. So we're not spending time in the morning, baking, prepping, like I said, washing dishes, all that kind of stuff that we've seen. So, we've developed also, in addition to, which is part of our responsibility, like how do we maximize average ticket price at retail? If you've never sold retail, you probably don't know how to do that. So developing a learning management system where you can replicate retail sales scripting. We have a great, kind of retail sales script where we take a customer on a flavor journey and we fill up a box of 6 or 12 versus selling a one or two. That's very impactful, from 2018 to getting on the other side of, 21, 20 and 21 and into 22, we increased our average ticket price by almost $10 by just changing the retail script, which is pretty amazing. And obviously being able to replicate that through technology and videos and learning management tools.
Hmm. Hmm. So I will tell you, use the term flavor journey and sort of building a box or building the different macarons that people could, you're almost putting them in a position to try different ones. Years ago, I think I've
Yep.
told you this, I started my franchising career way back in the day as a franchisee of Dunkin', back when we actually still made
Yep.
donuts in the shop. And we used to have people that would come in every day and buy like the same donut or a dozen donuts, and like 6 or 7 of them would be the same donut. And we would almost force them, hey, why don't you try this? Because we
Yeah.
knew if we did that, when they would come in for the one or the two, and they had tasted some of the other ones, ultimately they'd walk out of the store with maybe not a dozen, but a half dozen. And we would almost make the second sale on the first visit, if you will, by simply giving
Yep.
them that flavor journey. So I heard a couple things there. So first of all, there's some stuff there that I think is kind of sexy in a sense, and that is you're telling me that a French pastry, a macaron, you're actually having that produced in Europe, okay, and France and Belgium and parts of Switzerland. That's all kind of the same place anyway to me.
Yep.
So you're actually having it produced where it was invented or developed or first started. So I think that's like
Sure.
outrageously, there's a ton of equity in that. You're telling
Yep.
me that part of the process, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like part of the process is the freezing and the pulling the moisture out. So because sometimes when people hear something's frozen, they go, "Oh, it's frozen." But in this
Yeah.
case,
Yeah.
it's actually good.
That's how it's made. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Correct. Yeah.
and then I'm hearing, it can come in. It's got an outrageously long shelf life. A year is a long shelf life, so that you have
Yep.
very little or limited, I don't want to say none, but very little or limited supply chain issues in this. So
Correct.
how do franchisees capitalize on that? So is it something that they can do in small square footage? Is it something they need a warehouse to store these things? What does that look like as a business model advantage to the franchisee that you're doing all of those things?
Yeah, we developed a very kind of unique business model. I'll tell you, I'm sure you know, there is a unit called an RMU, which is a retail merchandising unit. So if you go into any mall in the country, there's going to be mall issued carts. They're usually clustered in fours. You'll see a lot in the holidays and anything, Dead Sea products to caps to T-shirts or whatever else may be sold off of those. The RMU space, also known as sort of the specialty leasing space, are generally shorter term leases, but they're also the lowest rent leases in the mall as well. So you have, specialty leasing, and then you have like a bigger kiosk, like attached to the floor, build out. So think of a Starbucks, in the middle of the mall. very expensive, very high rent. And then the third level is kind of your inline store. So you walk into, whatever it may be, a Pottery Barn or a Sephora or whatever. So we actually took our little carts, which look like kiosks. We built the specs around the RMU, and they're not attached to the floor. They have a self-contained water sink to appease the health department for washing hands. And we created our own category in the malls, which is now known as a TOU, a tenant-owned unit, meaning we're bringing our own units into that space. And why that's important, and people always ask, like, we're not just malls, but, transportation hubs, high traffic areas, we're Port Authority here in the middle of the city. But we are getting into A, B mall properties for $2,000 a month, $2,500 a month, the same as you would pay in a C, B kind of regular strip retail space or whatever. But with that constant traffic, we're a gifting brand, so we excel at Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, of course, all the holidays. We do pushes around 4th of July, back to school. So all of those times during the year, you see like this great, inflation of foot traffic into these properties at, very reasonable, probably I would say best in class rental rates, relatively speaking, which makes, I think the business model, very attractive for a lot of people.
Yep. So, okay. So from a franchisee support, again, sticking with this concept of building a solid foundation in this question here, the fact that you guys have figured out that I don't have to spend $400,000 to open up a storefront, okay, to do this, is again a support mechanism where you've created some resources behind the concept of the product, because the product is just the tip of the iceberg. Okay, that's how I see it. It's how do you market? How do you sell it? Where do you sell it? Who do you sell it to? What are the multiple income streams? So what I'm hearing here is that the company has taken the opportunity, the time, the sweat equity, if you will, to figure out how do we do this in a way that we could set up our franchisee at a lower cost. So that's the first piece there. And then I'm hearing, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day. And so there's two pieces here, or actually the piece that I want to talk about, again, in a support mechanism, is franchisors constantly need, I believe, to give their franchisees new, different, and as I said earlier, innovative ways to make money. So if I'm selling a Macaron, or if I'm selling a donut, let's say when I was in the donut business, there's essentially one occasion to use. I want a donut, I want a Macaron, I'm going to go buy one or five, and I'm going to eat them. Okay. All right. That's nice. That's good. But what's the add-on value? What is the other occasion to use? What's the frequency of visit? Now, you mentioned gifts. So talk to me about that. Are these macarons packaged, or is this something I would bring to someone's home on a visit? If I'm a lawyer, let's say, or I want to give out client gifts, is it something I would use this? Talk to me about that level of support in the ways that you help franchisees create multiple income streams.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know, it's been 6 or 7 years ago. We really started leaning into just gifting, generally speaking. I think one of the brands that we emulate or want to emulate or become, frankly, is like a nothing bundt cake. They've really excelled in that space. It's a different product, but like all the things you just said, it's still about executing and how do you sell more bundt cakes. They leaned heavily into gifting, tons of product sampling. That's one thing we're huge on. Product sampling at retail. We've also done some really cool, what we call whoop walks, where we go out and, do some like product drops and low-rise office buildings, around the business and just dropping off some macarons. People are always really excited about that. Everybody gifts, right? Whether you're a real estate agent, a financial planner, a mortgage guy, car dealer, it just goes on and on and on. So we've created custom programs for each of those individual verticals on like, who do I talk to? What's the best way to execute this business? There's literally like, modules and things we've built out to execute on that type of gifting. We built a very cool pop-up cart, which, you can assemble in like 10 minutes and put in the back of your car, the back of your SUV. We've acquired some, large B2B accounts like JP Morgan offices. nationally. We've set up so franchisees can go in and do pop-ups in the office lobby, which are great. We have one of our franchisees here right outside of the city, Santiago, who you may have met at one of our events. He just like he has like one a day going. It's crazy, just
Really?
in different places. It's just like an animal. So there's that avenue as well. I mentioned we're really excited about the Whoops, Macaroon mobile trailer that's coming soon. Also, we have distribution and shipping from New York here in Manhattan. We can ship gifts, so our franchisees are able to sell corporate gifting. So let's say Oracle, wants to do 100 gifts for their employees. They can submit the order to us. We, fulfill it. They accept the money. We take a little bit out just to cover our labor costs for fulfilling, packaging, and all that kind of stuff. The customer is responsible for the shipping cost. So our franchisees can also ship outside of their markets for B2B and corporate gifting as well. So there's quite a few avenues there to attack.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. So there's a digital component to this. So is it, and I love that idea that you fulfill for your franchisees, because that's typically something that the franchisee on the unit level may not be able to do on that, on a big level like that. So is it, as a consumer, can I'm a big 1-800-Flowers guy. Okay. But can I go online and say, hey, for Valentine's Day, I want to ship a box to my wife as a Valentine's Day gift, or to my daughter? Am I able to do that?
You can, and I know you know very well how e-commerce and franchising goes. So the way we set ours up is, anything that's within we give them a 10-mile radius around their location, digital radius. So that's different than the FDD radius.
Right.
And that's predominantly that's the reason for that delivery. And they can extend it further too. We're young, so we're not, we're pretty flexible with this stuff still. Predominantly around the third-party deliveries will deliver about 10 miles. So kind of anything coming in that digital universe, 10-mile radius, like we'll give them credit for. If it's e-com, really the only thing is like Whoops, corporate support that we would take credit for is, like what we'll call a white space order that's just not near a store. We want to have our customers still be able to access the brand and the products, but everything else gets pushed to the franchisee level. We do get a decent amount of B2B inbound leads for corporate gifting things for, the XYZ company. We push all those, every single one, back to a franchisee, regardless of where it comes in at, because it's a remote order in most cases, so it doesn't matter where they're at because we're shipping it for them. So we try and get all that stuff back down to our franchisees.
Yeah, it makes perfectly good sense to me. So if you just joined us, we're talking with Ben Woodruff, who's the co-founder and CEO of Whoops, which is a retail macaroon concept with about 30 units. We're talking about building a solid foundation and innovative ways that franchisors can support their franchisees. And we've probably discussed 4, 5, 6 of them now, which is absolutely terrific. So, we have a lot of franchisors that listen to the podcast. Many of them are startups and emerging. So hopefully, they get some great ideas out of you today. Sort of what's your last word? We're kind of running out of time here. What's the last thing you'd like to leave the audience with? And then I'll ask you, if people want to reach you, how they do that. So maybe you can kind of cover both those things. Last word. And if people want to reach you, what do they do?
Yeah, I think just in general, it doesn't matter if it's franchising or whatever business you're in. I think ultimately, like, it's just super important to create good teams and good people in your teams and work with, people that want to help other people. That's really kind of our culture. We have great macarons. We've developed good support systems. But most importantly, I think our team in general just cares about the people we bring in and their success. And I think that's as important that really as anything. So we're going to continue to focus on, our core beliefs and values as we grow the system. We're going to make a bunch of mistakes moving forward. We've made a bunch of mistakes in the past. We're always going to try and, learn, continue to get better and evolve and create more opportunities for our franchisees. We call them Whoopsters, by the way, which I should have been
Wait,
using
I'm sorry. What do you call them? Whoopsters?
Whoopsters, and
I love
our
it.
our franchisee convention is Whoop Stock, is what we call it. Our annual convention.
That's terrific. That's terrific. So if someone wants to reach you or get to the company and they want to learn more about either, what we discussed or maybe become a franchisee, how do they do that?
Yeah. Always available by email, Ben at bywoops.com, and whoopsfranchise.com as well. We've got a very informative, I should say, franchise site, which is very helpful as well.
Great, great. Well, Ben, thank you very much for spending the time with us today. Invaluable insights in the sense that, you said a lot of stuff that people may not have thought about in terms of how to support franchisees. So I truly appreciate that. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week down in beautiful Philadelphia at my favorite conference of the year, Springboard. Again, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it, man.